Hi, my name is Sakshi, and I'm the founder of Indian Creative Women. I'm also the moderator for today, and I'm so excited to partner with the Wench Film Festival. I believe in the cause, and let's see what we have today. I'm super excited. So, when I was a little girl, I was obsessed with advertising. I still remember watching the Cadbury ad back in the 90s, this girl dancing in wild abandon. I also remember watching the Ericsson ad where the girl sitting in a restaurant was pretending, where the woman sitting in the restaurant was pretending to talk to the man who walks up to her, but she was actually talking to someone else on the phone. If these ads could move me as a little girl, imagine what more women in advertising, women in interesting, powerful roles could do to millions of girls in India. Advertising has always enjoyed a unique position in India, that of a huge influence. It's one of the biggest media in the country, and it has the power to change behavior, whether it was eradicating polio or inviting action on domestic violence. In 2022, advertising is set to hit 70,343 crores. So today, what I really want to talk about is how advertising can influence 600 million females in this country. I am so excited to introduce this amazing panel, each of whom I admire and totally in awe of, starting with 𝐒𝐨𝐧 𝐸𝐻 Director, or as we call an ad filmmaker, an alumnus of the reputed Main Media Workshops US. 𝐒𝐨𝐧 has been directing commercials for over a decade now, and her vast canvas includes work for brands like Google, WhatsApp, Reebok, Times of India, Tanishq, Titan, Vogue, P&G. I could go on. Her work has picked up a host of awards, both on the national as well as the international stage. Welcome, 𝐒𝐨𝐧.
Thank you, Sakshi. Super excited to be here.
Our next panelist is Sonal Narayan, Executive Vice President at Energy BBDO Chicago. Sonal has led global strategy teams across markets like the US, Latin America, Asia, and Europe. She has shaped global brands like The Economist, Coca-Cola, Kotex, Huggies, Twitter, and Nike. She has a deep and passionate belief in the need for social change in the areas of health, environment, culture, identity, representation, and grassroots level political efforts. Well, how many of us can do that? Go, Sona.
Hi, Sakshi. Thanks for the introduction.
Next, we have Akansha Director, or like all of us lovingly call an ad filmmaker. She brings with her over 10 years of experience from television promos to digital content to short films to advertising. Her stylized storytelling has won her a bag full of medals in Indian advertising. She fears no genre, having done bikes, beauty, music, and comedy in equal measure. Welcome, Akansha.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
We also have Teesta Sen, Regional Creative Director, Wunderman, Thompson, and also someone who I can just worship all the time. Teesta has been ranked among the 20 most creative people in Asia and has worked on some iconic brands like Unilever, ITC, Johnson & Johnson, Cadbury. Her campaigns have won numerous prestigious awards across the globe, including Cannes, Clio, D&AD, you name it, and she's won it. Passionate about gender diversity, Teesta is a founding member of The Collective, an initiative solely created for women in the Indian advertising, media, and design industry to fight sexual harassment and discrimination in the workplace. Teesta is also the leading advisor to us at Indian Creative Women. Welcome, Teesta. Good to see you again.
Hi, everybody. Great to be here.
Next, we have Ramya Rao, executive producer at Oink Films. She's been instrumental in shaping some of the industry's most appreciated and effective pieces of communication. In a career spanning more than 15 years, she's worked with reputed advertising production houses like Foot Candles and Nirvana Films, and was a founding member of Handloom Pictures. Hi, Ramya.
Hello, so happy to be here.
We also have Sonal Thakur, co-founder and CEO, Diquery Digital. Sonal brings on the table over a decade of expertise in helping brands reach their audience. She has worked with the likes of Excel Home Entertainment, Amir Khan Productions, 20th Century Fox, Disney, UTV, Sony, and has extensive experience across profiles from marketing, branding to international distribution of films. She's a management graduate from Whistling Woods International and a member of a global volunteer support system for startups and entrepreneurs looking to connect. Welcome, Sonal.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here and looking forward to an amazing discussion today.
Yay! All of you are here. This took a while. So just to begin with, I think I really wanted to start with asking all of you, what was the moment when you realized you wanted to join the advertising industry? So Shisha, tell us, like, what was that moment when you were like, I'm going to direct and I'm going to direct commercials?
So, it's actually not a very exciting story. My father was in advertising for like 40 years. So I've grown up being in some almost like second generation advertising. So both me and my brother joined advertising. I've always wanted to be a filmmaker because I wanted to travel. So I didn't want to have a desk job and I didn't want to have to show up for meetings. So which is why I wanted to join a production house. So my brother actually joined an agency and I joined a production house pretty much in the same year. So that's how I came about
so it's in the
doing.
So, and
or maybe we just had too much of it around us while growing up.
That's amazing. It's in the genes. Like, how many of us get that opportunity? That's amazing. Akansha, what about you?
Well, not an exciting story either. It wasn't an epiphanous moment, but it was a very, very slow realization that, hey, I think I have a gene of understanding visuals and music, and I enjoy packaging a lot. I was a child of television. I have always been cutting promos and being an editor, and then someday took a very unwise decision of leaving a camera with me and leaving a studio at my hands. And that was the day I tasted blood and realized that this is what I want to do.
That's so cool. Sonal?
For me, I mean, I always knew as a child that I also didn't want a corporate job, although I am on the, agency side of advertising, so slightly more corporate than the production and direction side of things. But I was, as a child, always growing up, I was always interested in culture and the creative product and creating something that had the power to shift, how people thought, how people interacted with, others around them and as well as objects was a passion of mine without even realizing it. As I grew up, I was in a family that was full of academics, so advertising was kind of looked down upon in my family. But in my generation, I had a cousin who managed to break that cycle and entered JWT back when it was called HTA, and freelance there as an intern. Well, not freelance there. Was an intern who was paid nothing and started his career there. I looked up to him, so I kind of followed his footsteps. I also went to communication school and studied advertising, so that's how I landed up in the industry.
That sounds like a long and exciting journey.
Yeah, it was one filled with many arguments and being positioned as the rebellious black sheep in the family.
Sista, what about you?
Actually, it began with a weird who said Akansha ex-boyfriend story. So I think when I was in college, I was working with I did some summer holiday rubbish with some film company. Actually, started just the other way around. I began with an ad film company because somebody I was seeing had somebody to do with some complicated story, and I loved it, and I loved the. I used to literally clean tires and do absolutely you know what it's like at that time. You had to do everything, including make tea sometimes, I think. But I was fascinated by the writing that went on, and I always wanted to write. And of course, I thought naively at 18 that I could write much better. What is all this rubbish that people are doing? So I decided I wanted to be a writer in advertising, but really learned everything I could about, I think, the industry in those 2 grueling years of ad film production. And then decided okay, I need to start writing. That's where really, where I thought that is where it was heading. and applied to an agency, but then, knew a lot of people because everybody was doing films with us. And it was just a natural progression to start, as a copywriter. And I joined Lintas as a copywriter, and that was really my first job.
That's cool. Ramya, what about you?
I always knew that I wanted to do something with, arts, music, being somewhere related to that, art side of the whole business. And so I learned about mass communication and then studied video production and then said, okay, yes, I'll come to Bombay and work in feature films. But feature film stints didn't last long because I realized everybody, gives marketing kigali for everything. This was 20 years ago. And then I, came across ad film production. And I was in AD for a very long time. And there I realized, people are educated, they speak proper English, know so much of Galis. And then I said, okay, I'll stick here. And then it's been like 15 years now. Yeah. So I like what I'm doing. So, yes.
That's so cool. Chanel, I know you have a very interesting profile because you handle the advertising for films. So it's like an interesting crossover. So what was your experience like? And what was that moment that led you to think that I want to do this?
So I think that's where it all started. I loved movies growing up. I think X-Men, superhero movies, and working around watching our Bollywood films, it just gave a lot of this thought of this is something fun. It will be fun to see what happens behind it. Maybe it was just the starstruck kid that started the whole conversation about. And whilst it was looked up on, my mom's a doctor, my dad's a CA, and media and industry was always looked at as a hobby. And as series of things turned out, I ended up getting into film production. Luckily, Whistling Woods and Manipal University came up with a collaborative course. So that was like a good enough, okay, it's an MBA course. That became like a convincing factor that it'll be an MBA. I might not have to give an entrance exam. It's the first year. So the first initiative for me to kind of drive towards it was career driven, where it'll be a degree, which is a usual Indian family convincing factor. And then I realized that because I love brands and brand stories so much, whilst I was working with the different groups of companies, and I realized that I was right there in the center of the transition between digital and the regular advertisement conversations. And whilst the mediums have changed, the storytelling still continues to be the most powerful conversation there. And since I could transition, if I could do that for movies, why not do that for brands as well? Why not do that for everything else around me? And if stories connect us, and digital is one of the best ways to reach out to people, why not grow that? And ended up being amongst the first few movers there, started a lot of digital initiatives in a lot of places I worked at, and eventually started my own company about 6 years ago in collaboration with my partners in Singapore. That's what got me here at the moment.
That's really cool. And that brings me to my next question. So if I had to ask you, what's that one thing that you love about the industry? If each of you could name that one thing that keeps you passionate and interested, what would it be? We could start with anyone. Ramya, why don't you go first?
I like the unpredictability, the energy, I come from production background. So, the thrill of setting up huge production, for big shoots and travel and everything. Yeah, getting all the things together. That's what is exciting for me. And no day, no shoot is same. Though in spite of doing like hundreds of commercials, still every shoot is so different. So it keeps me on my toes. It's challenging. It's every day you're doing something new. So that's the best part for me of this industry.
Yeah, I could totally imagine the action on set and doing it every day. So energy is like the perfect way to describe it. Tista, what about you?
I'm just going to build on what Ramya said. I think for me, it's the ideas and every day, literally every day, meeting new people, listening to people, and on this, how do I put it? Like listening to 100 different ideas on the same thing, and every day there is something new to learn. And I think that's really important for me. And it's a thing I have. There is something new that somebody tells me every day. And I don't mean, it has to be like, a senior person or a mentor. It could be anybody. But I think you're in an industry where you celebrate newness, and how wonderful is that? And the newness could just be, is usually an idea. It could be a word, it could be a visual. And that really is, I think for me, it still gives me like a huge high to hear something not been done before. And you go like, aha, like for me, it's still like the biggest high. And if I can experience even a bit of it every day, like wonderful.
Cool. I experienced the same, so I totally relate to that. Akansha, what about you?
When you asked that question, there was a quote that came up in my mind. Someone said that if you're a writer and you say that you love writing, then you're not a writer. You have to hate your job. You have to hate it every single morning. You have to hate the process that comes with it. It has to torment you, and you have to suffer for it, because there's that one moment in your job that just makes that suffering worth it. So with all the pain of pre-production and pitching and treatment notes and wrecking and bruising your knees and budgets not matching and work is a pain. But when it's worth it, in that moment where you're standing and you call a cut,
yeah,
it's that moment, that high is inexplicable. It's that as a director you have just created something out of nothing. That dialogue fell in place at the right time. That moment was perfect. The light was just right. You captured it, you got it. And that little piece that you just got, that 6-second shot, nobody else on this planet has. So that high that you just created something out of everything and yet nothing will always amaze me. And like a child, I'm still excited as hell and bouncing against the walls a day prior to shoot, which makes me realize that I'm willing to suffer for it for a little longer. That's what I think, that moment when you're just in it, where everything else just doesn't matter. I think that's why I love my job.
The pain and process of creation.
Yep.
That's amazing. Sonal, what about you?
I think very similar things. The unpredictability is certainly something that is super exciting. I work my job is that of a strategist. So some of what Tista said rang true for me, being able to think, being able to look at things differently, provide new perspectives. Advertising, as they say, is the job of making the familiar new and making the new familiar. So I love doing that. And the fact that, every project, every brand that you work on is new. I'm so glad. So many of my colleagues have made the shift to client side, etc., for more stability. But I don't want that. I would get bored to death if I had to do the same thing every day. So yeah, the newness of what advertising offers every day. There's always something new to learn from my juniors, from my seniors, from whichever brand I'm working on, whichever new market I'm looking at, whichever new country we're visiting, and trying to understand the culture and traditions of. It's been super exciting.
That's, yeah. I think for you it's unique because it's having to experience it in different countries, which I'm sure is amazing.
Yeah.
Chanel, why don't you tell us?
I love having the power to influence conversation with different forms of creatives. So because digital offers such a wide array of possibilities of what kind of creatives I can put a full length conversation. I can put an hour-long video and then drive that conversation. I can put a small GIF or a creative or a meme and drive that. A digital ecosystem had the ability to influence some stock market, GameStop, if people are aware of the GameStop scenario, where a community of Reddit users just came together to tank a multi-million-dollar hedge fund. I'm not too familiar with the stock market terms, but that's the power that I think digital has, and it's still very untapped. And it's very exciting to be able to read these stories, to probably try and influence or imbibe those in my campaigns that I work with, and just be able to tell that kind of story beyond a point.
Different
yeah.
kinds of stories. Yeah, it's
Yes.
an addiction.
Absolutely.
Shisha.
So, what I find absolutely fascinating is that, you have the ability to speak to such a large audience. So, literally like advertising holds captive like so many people. And, if you can make or, normalize things, little things, that otherwise, what is considered as normal, what is considered as beautiful, if you can start little conversations, make little differences, and, none of our work is path-breaking or, it doesn't change the world. But, if you start normalizing what people think is beautiful, how people don't think like northeastern features are something they appreciate or like or want to see, dark skin, short hair, all these random cliches. If you can start normalizing till little by little, I find that to be a big victory, a big joy. We fight with all our clients for the kind of casting we try and do, and that really excites me, little victories one day at a time.
That's cool. And I think this is a perfect segue to talk about what do women bring to the table. We've read about the female gaze, we've experienced it, and this is a question I really want to ask Akansha and Shisha first. What do you think you bring to the table? Now, Akansha, I know you've worked on bikes. I know you've covered sports, so you've kind of taken care of what are traditionally perceived as masculine categories. So, how do you think you changed that, or what did you bring that others probably wouldn't have, or things that came to you naturally?
I think that this is a tiny pet peeve of mine. Tisa knows about it. I actually dislike it when I'm asked to do something or brought onto a project because I'm a female director. I don't understand that. I feel like I'm an exception to a rule, and that feels like a nod to a rule. So when you ask me what is it that I bring to the table, hopefully it's my skill, hopefully it's my craft, hopefully it's my understanding. Hopefully I'm being able to bridge the gap between a brand need and a brand message, along with cinema and filmmaking, and find that sweet spot where it hits just right. You said, what is a female gaze and how is it that we're doing it differently or doing it better? I think differently is a better word than better. What's happening is, there are two kinds of female gazes, according to me. One is decidedly non-male. One has decided it is everything which is other than male. So it starts to define itself in context of the other. It is, it's a little loud, it's rebellious, and it's got a lot of baggage, and it's essentially a corrector of everything that was not represented 10 years ago. So it's extremely self-aware, and I feel that a year or two ago, we were, I think, in that space where every piece of advertising or creative was very, very aware of it being non-male, which is fine. Anytime that a voice has not been represented for a long time, when it sort of does and gets the opportunity to be represented, it's going to be a little out there. There's another kind of female gaze, which I hope that we are more and more sort of moving towards, which is more inclusive, which is nuanced, which is balanced, which is not so anxious about its femininity, which is very open about it, which is accepting of differences and not rejecting it altogether. It is also very inclusive of various lived experiences, as Shisha just said some time back, that we as filmmakers have the privilege to be able to redefine what we understand as normal lived experiences. I'll give you a short example. I was having this conversation with someone the other day, and that I hope succinctly answers your question before I hand over to Shirsha. Was this, that there was this pregnancy test ad that came a long time back. We've always seen women be very jubilant after they see that their pregnancy test is positive. But there was an ad that came 5 or 7 years back where a woman was actually jubilant when it came negative. And I thought that was beautiful. Why don't we do more advertising like that? That's a female gaze, which is not unnecessarily trying to make a space for herself. It's so gently destabilizing what we have conventionally understood as a notion of femininity. It's very gently destabilizing that. It doesn't need to, and I don't think the loudest voice is the wisest voice. Sometimes it's these little things that are going to just shift the narrative a little by little. That's the female gaze I hope to continue, and I hope to see more, and I hope to be a part of more. Yeah, that's what I think I want to continue bringing to the table.
Yeah, I mean, it's the nuances I wanted to hit on, rather than like, hey, this is a women empowerment ad and we need a woman creative director. We'll touch on that in just a little bit. Shisha, what about you?
So, I think one of the most important things that we should do, and it comes to us naturally, but sometimes some of the advertising that is so it's so patriarchal in a way, and they don't even know it. They don't do it. They don't do it because they want to do it, but they don't even realize it. And I'll give you an example, and without taking names. So we were called on for a meeting saying that, we're doing this very different kind of advertising and only you can do it because we want the female gaze and all of that in your point of view. So, I mean, we trudged all the way along to BKC for this damn meeting because it was such a big idea that they didn't want to share it over email. And we go there and they're very proudly narrating this story of this girl who's cleaning the house, like scrubbing, cleaning, and dusting. And the husband is just staring at her and saying that, oh my God, you do so much work and you're still so beautiful. And it was for a soap. And they kept, and I was just listening to him and thinking that how is this one new, liberating or whatever, and why do you want a female gaze? Why is this woman dusting and scrubbing and still looking beautiful? Like, what is the need for this woman to look beautiful while he's scrubbing and cleaning? Like, literally, that is the script. You're dusting and looking beautiful. And we couldn't believe it. Like, we were just sitting and staring and thinking that, is this your new idea? Like, so they really, somewhere down, those four very adult men thought that this was, I mean, they're founders of agencies and things like that, So, are you really thinking this is like a new idea and you're shifting from the normal kind of, really, really toxic shit that you're used to? And they said, oh, this is what you think, and what do you think? Like, what do you tell them? Because they're so proud of their idea. So I think as a female gaze, we have to identify the problems, because sometimes people don't even realize what the problem is. They believe that this is a new idea and they don't see the problem because they've grown up with it. And I think for us to be able to identify it and call it out is a very, very important job. And of course, and try and do things differently, and nuance. And actually, when it comes to the female gaze, there's actually no place for the female gaze. I don't think Indian advertising even wants the female gaze. It's always about how you get the chick if you use that deo, or how you can look beautiful for the man if it's a perfume. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's never about what the woman wants. It's always even if it's a woman, if it's a product for a woman or a man, it's always what the man wants, and it's always perceived in that way. So I think these are the things that we need to identify and talk about more often,
Yeah, yes, definitely. And that brings me to a very interesting question. The fact that women empowerment has become such a vehicle for brands in India, like all they want to do is, hey, we want to create a woman empowerment ad, and that's going to be the next big thing. But when it comes to walking the talk, when it comes to women behind the camera or women in advertising agencies, I mean, we know how the industry treats its women. So starting with Teesta, why do you think that's happening? And, what do you think about it?
So let me just not digress, but start. I think I'm just hearing and echoing what I'm hearing, across the panel, which is we don't create communication for people. We create communication for men of a certain age group who work or have a certain mindset, or we create a profile of a woman who actually doesn't exist. We don't really, which is actually quite the tragedy, because we are finally communicating to people and talking to people, hopefully on a one-on-one, but we don't look at them as real people. And I completely agree. The woman is in the kitchen making like perfect those fulka rotis, not even normal flat chapatis. They have to pop, even now, and her children are always like, well behaved. And I mean, there's so many things that we propagate ourselves and we're all guilty of, because that's the advertising, that's the world of advertising. Everything's glossy, everything's super aspirational, and everything is not real. And by real, I mean, are you really talking to real people? And then when it comes to brands wanting to be, woke and wanting to be doing good, which I also feel is like, it's a huge bugbear for me, because it's not just about walking the talk, but I mean, are you even allowed to say that I want to empower women? Because who are you? And, as a brand, who are you to empower me? I can be empowered pretty much on my own. Thank you very much. So I just feel there are these two parallel tracks. There are brands most often run by marketing departments with men, talking to men in agencies about creating work for women, which is empowering, which is like this little, what should I say, a little cozy little bubble which has no connection with the real world. And then there's the real world about real women saying, talk to me, listen to me, hear me. And somehow they're just running together, and it's all part of the same industry. And until we collide and kind of like, collapse, perhaps, I don't know what's going to happen when we collide. But then I feel the kind of ideas, the kind of scripts, and I'm talking scripts here because we are filmmakers here, and it's all about storytelling. I think then we can be more authentic in our storytelling if we really start, relating to the people we're talking to as real people, and not somebody who, owns a car and lives in a 2-bedroom house and looks after her family. I think that narrative has to change, and I don't hear that anymore. And I'm talking about much before even coming to the, the story and the script, and then bringing Sheersha and Akansha in. What is the discussion we're having in agencies, with clients, in boardrooms, when we're discussing brands? Are we really looking at people and feelings, or are we looking at this really, two-dimensional cutout of somebody? And that is, I think, a huge part of the problem, or rather, the way things are, and that has to change.
Yeah. Actually, if I may add to that, what Tista just said, right, that wo roti phul ke jab tak bubble nahi banegi, tab tak ad nahi banega. The thing is that roti is phuling because of the atta. But here what we are selling is, look at this superwoman. So unfortunately, she has to imbibe all the awesomeness of this product. She stands for the product. And now what we're selling is not just the product, but that standard and that aspiration of the modern new woman who has to be everything that the brand stands for. So I agree with her. One needs to start dissociating, these false standards of empowerment with a brand, but get real. There are still brands who very rarely put out a message that is just for the sake of saying it, for taking a stand, and it's not. It's still advertising, but it's got nothing to do with phuli hui rotis or any of those other standards that we've come to sort of expect.
So I have a little bit to add here as well. I mean, one of the brands that really brings it out beautifully is Dove ads. One they had a recent one where they talked about going beyond the beauty that's skin deep. Also the fact that as a marketer, I realized that a lot of expectation on us is to define a target audience. In a world which is driven by individual human, and that's why I do what I do, right? Because whilst we do have a very broad target audience conversation, we try and bring in the human element to it, because it also adds your interests. Because especially on social platforms, you can do that. The conversation of a spillover that we hear so often in a traditional ad ecosystem gets fairly neutralized when it comes to digital, because there's very rarely a spillover that goes beyond your target audience. There are techniques that work around it. Again, the whole conversation about trying to be, it's not about being sensitive. Having a woman on a panel, having a woman on the team is not a gimmick anymore. It's supposed to be something very real. And if you look at what happened very recently with Burger King and the way their Women's Day tweet backfired, their intentions were right. So what usually happens is the intentions of a brand might be right, the execution just goes haywire completely. They started off with trying to say that the intention was to talk about women need to be in more culinary, they should be given more importance in a culinary world, but they ended up starting their tweet as the women's place belongs in a kitchen. And that's something that I think all of us collectively hate. I think we've rebelled with the idea of, though we love cooking, we want to do it at our own terms. We don't want to be called out to it. We don't want to cook. We don't want to cook. I mean, I think that's where it begins and ends. And it just backfired. And though they apologized, they ultimately had to. So digital corrects. I mean, what I don't like too much about digital is we are able to erase a mistake, and that once it's erased, it's out of our memories. So it gives an opportunity for someone else to make that mistake again. And that I think is something that there's a voice that needs to echo for a longer time than just deleting a tweet.
Right. Yeah. I completely agree. So now my next question is for you. So what's the role that brands and agencies can play? You know, knowing that P&G just committed to hiring more, not just women in their workplace and agencies, but also more female directors. They signed up for Free the Bid. They've been the biggest ambassadors for Free the Bid. What do you think brands and agencies can do in India? I mean, knowing that 80%, 75 to 80% of the purchasing decisions are being made by women.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I'm going to say, I think, is related to the questions that you've asked before and some of what has been echoed in the conversation. The first point I wanted to make was, I think, something that Sonal touched upon as well as Teesta, is that I think, to be honest, to make a real difference, we have to start looking at who we're speaking to as people rather than consumers. I think this narrative of the consumer is one that is very self-serving, because what it means and implies is that that person who you're looking at for the sole purpose of consuming your product, the one you're manufacturing, and that brings something to the narrative. So that changes the way you're approaching advertising and communication, and that is where I have where I have a huge problem with brands wanting to empower women. I mean, I feel that most of them are doing that because they want people to buy more of their product, and everything that they're evoking, that whether it's your emotions, whether it's even if it is, the more brands overtly try to play into this women empowerment narrative, the more self-serving it becomes somewhere. The most genuine way of empowering is to start, as they say, charity begins at home, is to start by looking at how you as an organization are treating your women employees, what kind of an environment you're creating for them. Is it safe? I mean, I think that the biggest problem in Indian advertising, because I haven't spent too much time in Indian advertising. I'd say I've spent about 6 years of my career, 6 out of 19 years of my career in it. But I felt that the biggest problem that I faced was the lack of safety. I loved advertising for how fun it was. I was a young strategist, and fresh out of college, we'd all be going to all these media parties at that time, and you were always worried about your safety. At the end of the day, you didn't know whether the colleague who was dropping you home in your car was going to jump you or not. And it was always, and I mean, because I recently spent 2 years again in India working in advertising in a place like Delhi, it's a very testosterone-fueled environment. So the first thing that agencies need to do is look at themselves and how they're and the kind of environments that are created within. And then the second thing I feel is that, to me, empowering women is about allowing the woman to have a voice of her own, rather than one that is one that is burdened by the expectations of what advertising needs to look and sound like and its dominant narrative codes. One example, I mean, I was I spent 2 years back in India between 2015 and 2017. One of the brands that I worked on was Royal Enfield. And I kept telling people, this is also about the female gaze. I don't think of myself as a woman. I think of myself as a person. That's how I was brought up. Fortunately or unfortunately, the realization that I was a woman came much later. And when I look at things in my own particular way. And so as I was studying the brand, one of the things that stood out to me was that this was a brand that had so much history, and it was a brand that India had turned into a cult. But it was a brand that was constantly aping Harley Davidson and all the codes of Western motorcycle advertising. I was like, why are we not celebrating what made it a cult in India and what the stories around it here? Why are we trying to, show men in leather jackets and trying to impress sexy girls? I mean, what is that? And that to me was my gaze. You could call it the female gaze, but it came from my own perspective of my way of looking at the brand, which was a new way, and could certainly have taken a brand that was trying to go international to a totally new place. So in the international market, imagine a brand that celebrates its Indian roots, a motorcycle brand that celebrates its Indian roots. That would have been a superb narrative, and it would have been so authentic and so genuine. That perspective was not bought by client, by agency, by anything. And so like my voice was quelled, my voice was like wiped out, because everybody was like, you don't understand motorcycles, you don't understand why men are riding it, etc., etc. And I might not understand men, but I do understand. Firstly, it's stupid to assume that I don't understand motorcycles. I've also ridden motorcycles and scooters in small town India when I was growing up, but the thing is, even if you for a second assume that I don't know it as much as you do, I'm offering you a new perspective. I do understand what makes human psychology, what makes people's minds tick, and so I'm offering you a new way of selling your dusty old product, and revamping it for the future. But nobody wanted to listen to that because I was a woman. And that to me is another way in which, ad agencies as well as brands and clients need to start looking at women's empowerment and empowering, giving their own employees, giving their own colleagues voices, and trusting in them, frankly.
Listening and trusting.
Yeah.
Ramya, what do you think?
Well, from we get scripts. So I can hear an echo. Sorry, 1 second. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the only thing that I think we as production house can do, as a woman-led production house can do, is choosing the scripts that comes to us, where if a woman is shown derogatorily or just shown as a proper 2D character, try and flesh her out more, give her more things in the script, try and make her more three-dimensional than just being a prop. Or if you can't do that, then we say no to those scripts and move on, because at least that's one thing we can do. Try to film scripts that we think will help in showcasing women in a better light than just the traditional patriarchal woman. Yeah, that's where I come from.
That's great. Yeah. And you have that power on the other side when you get into production. And Teesta, my next question's for you. I mean, we've seen sexism, we've seen objectification, we continue to see stereotypes in the Indian advertising world. So for me, I mean, it's an observation, but male characters still outnumber women. Women still continue to be shown as homemakers. Women cannot be shown funny at all. I am yet to come across an ad where you see a woman being funny on television. So what do you think we can change in the creative process? Apart from research, how we said that we redefining target audience is one way to look at it.
God, just firstly, just hire more women. I mean, hire more women, not because, it's about like acknowledging women, but just bringing that really, really special voice that Sonal just spoke about to say, listen to why it's being said differently. How do we change the way, women are portrayed? Firstly, I have to acknowledge that we have come a long way. It's not.
Tista, you're on mute. You went on mute.
I am. Is that okay?
Yep, we can hear you now.
I think we're much better off than where we were, like maybe 10 years ago, where we didn't question it. Now we're questioning it. I mean, I'm so proud that Ramya says we will reject scripts that's at her level when it's being written, but some client has bought a script that caters or conforms to this whole stereotype that we are trying to discredit. For me, sitting on the agency side and as a creative director, and I think that's the onus all women creative directors have to do, because scripts come our way, and it's taken me really long to explain to the guys, the writers, and they're all extremely talented. This is not a less talent or more talent thing. But guys don't think twice about writing a script, even for a light bulb, where then the woman is coming in holding I see it all the time. And it's like, by the way, it's not even part of the story. But I have a red marker and I'm like a headmistress, because I just underline stuff and say, but why? And they haven't even thought it's wrong, because it's nothing to do with the idea. The idea is very funny and it's got something else. But she is walking in with whatever samosas and chai or whatever women are serving on that particular day. And I think this, because that's how we've been conditioned, and that's the way we're looking at life. The guys in the boardroom, the guys on the marketing side, the creative directors who are writing, the senior writers who are writing, are all, this is their worldview, and this is their view of what the life they have lived, by the way. To get everybody to change overnight and to be enlightened is a humongous task. And we have to start just not just somewhere, but we have to start and be really harsh about it. I don't believe that you can, pussyfoot around it. And I agree. If you don't listen to me, I would rather walk away from the table. It's been very uncomfortable. And there's been some really not so pleasant conversations, because there are so many people you're dealing with. But you have to be fearless first, all of us. And I think any woman in the industry, even when it comes to safety, and demand it, because we need to start being not just assertive, but demanding it for the right reasons. And again, it's not about I am right, but to make people see that just by changing it a little bit, you're actually doing so much good. Casting, and again, we have Akansha and Shisha, here, and Sonal. There is why is she? I mean, we fought so long about it. There's to be a woman in a sari with a bun and the bindi, and she was in the kitchen. Or, I mean, we fought so much about, it's so subtle, but now you see somebody in a script, maybe she's working on her laptop, or she looked up, and I love it when I read, she looks up from her laptop, because it's 3 words in a script, but it tells me that somebody's looking at it from, looking at it from a real lens and saying, okay, this is what she's doing. She didn't walk in with a tray. She actually opened her friggin' laptop. And for me, that's a hurrah. And it is changing, Sakshi. It's very slow. Why don't we have funny women? An excellent question. I don't even find the men funny either. So maybe we should have some funny women on the, across the room. But hell yes. And are we doing enough? Not. But at least we're talking about it. And I think that's a great place to be.
Yes.
Because that quirky character is always the guy.
Yeah.
Like a funny, quirky guy, but the woman has to be white, sharp nose, and fair, thin, all of that. Fat, and all of that is no chance. All that a man can be, but woman has to be pretty.
Yeah. And the nerdy person is always the guy, And those,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? It's you're writing it for that, and I'd love to. And you have to change it on paper, man. Then I can go to Shisha and say, give me, like something which is so evolved. But I must be evolved in my head to begin with before I go to, an Akansha and a Shisha and say, now bring it to life. Because otherwise, you're just perpetuating what we've always, well, grown up thinking and believing in, and there is no change. And that's what we really need to correct.
Yeah,
But as you said, Tisa, it's all small things, as small things are making difference. So it's not like we can't change the world in one day, but small things, and we are doing it. We're all working towards it. Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have seen this. It came out recently in the US. It's a very US specific ad, so I doubt anybody's seen it. But it's an ad for this brand called Frida Moms. Just Google it and watch it. It is something else. It's unbelievable. It's really, really beautiful. So Frida Moms is a company that makes breast care products for women who are breastfeeding or pregnant. And watch it. I don't want to say anything about it.
I know.
But except for the fact that both the message as well as the subtext of the visuals, etc., is extremely empowering without having to overtly defy anything or being provocative, or it's beautiful. Watch it.
It's what Tista said. It's making it as real can be.
Yeah.
So, Chanel, question for you based on all of what we just discussed. How do you happen to get briefs where you have to create or promote work that objectifies women?
Fortunately, so far I haven't really gotten any of those briefs. Primarily because, again, there's a stark difference between the digital world and what I see in production offline in for the other traditional mediums, right? Primarily because digital has the ability to be criticized almost instantly.
Right.
The ad that spent, and plus the reason that people are shifting to digital also is the volumes of spends. For the brands, the spends also is drastically, it's significantly lower in general. If you'd see the ad that one of the jewelry brands did with Amitabh Bachchan, that got pulled off, they actually lost a lot of money, but they got a lot of free press. And that happened only because of digital. Burger King today did something wrong from a lot of perspective, but it got a lot of free press. And a lot of brands, good or bad, try to capitalize on that free press. Also, this brings me to a point where a lot of brands now are using the women-centric conversation either as a shock factor or as a pat on their own back. And they try and put that out on digital, and they try and create some really good conversations around it and some good points for themselves. Whilst on ground, they might not exactly be doing that. So it's just, it's an interesting perspective. They're not exactly walking the talk, but they're at least bringing that creative perspective there. One of the Instagram accounts, so a lot of influencer conversations are happening at this point of time. We've done a couple of influencer group. And again, the avenues for outreach to people in digital are starkly different. So a lot of importance is given to these influencer conversations and influencer activities. We did a couple for perfume brands, the way there was a male campaign and a female campaign. Almost everything was similar. There was no specific conversation about asking a woman to look sexier. They didn't even want women with selfies in their product. They just wanted women who are they are in a natural ecosystem. They're not airbrushed, and that was very refreshing to kind of know. Also, for all of y'all, if y'all have not, check out this profile on Instagram called Hot Dudes Reading. Guilty pleasure, absolutely. Amazing. It started off with this girl who was looking out for a good-looking boy for herself to start dating and stuff like that. It blew up. It was among those first few conversations from a female perspective. It's not sexual as much as it is. It's really beautifully written. Her captions are amazing. Enticing is the word that I'd use for it. Good exploration there, and they managed to get their revenue. So we talk about a lot of revenue as well. A lot of digital, because once you do in a traditional advertising ecosystem, it's a spend, it's a marketing spend. On the digital ecosystem, I always get these questions on how do we get the ROI on this, which is very frustrating at times because it's still a marketing activity. It's not a sales driven activity. Digital does give you sales. And it just sort of brings, and that is why the narrative too, talking about what are you looking for, the conversation about a product, an individual, all of that becomes more individualistic, and that's where the shift happens. I am shown products which interest me. I am more likely to buy those. As a woman, as a person, it neutralizes a lot of sexism around it. As far as safety is concerned, I don't really have to. A lot of times where I would feel that, okay, this is not something that's going in the right direction, I can always do a dummy shoot using the available stock footage without really spending too much on it, and show the client a perspective that I want to show. That, okay, you might look at it as that I don't understand this. Let me show you what I look at it from your brand perspective. And give them a short glimpse of what I'm looking at. And that makes my life a lot more simpler. I don't have to do something that I don't like. Maybe it's taking the easy way out. It might not be purist. It might not be as elaborate and as enticing and as exciting as most of the panelists have been, looking at. But it's still something which makes my life a lot more easier. I think I'll just leave it at that. That I try and make it more simpler for myself.
Yeah, no, I mean, role of media is, again, extremely crucial. Where you buy, what you do, the kind of platforms you speak on. That's, lately we've been reading so much about interventions and just being a disturbance. So my next question is the most important question of the day. Money. Why do women continue to be underpaid in our industry, knowing that this is the potential that we have? And secondly, if we get paid, why does that become an issue? Shisha, I saw your video recently, so this is coming from there. I saw it come from the collective, and that's why I want to hit upon that. Like, why is it a problem, and how do you feel about that?
So I don't think I'm underpaid. I think I get as much as, me or my other, people like me get paid. Ramya is saying something, though. She's on mute. Ramya, you're on mute if you're saying something. You're still on mute. Now you're not on mute.
No, Ramya, we can't hear you. I think we lost
I think I think your earpods are not, we can't hear you.
Sorry, now can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so I said I'll add to that because she knows only one side, the bargaining bit, negotiating bit I do. So, yeah.
But I honestly, after whatever has happened, I don't think I'm underpaid. I wouldn't want to earn any more money than I do, and I think what we get is budgets are great. That's no problem at all. But I am just amused at how everybody else has a problem with that. Like anybody and everybody on the street and said, "My God, did you charge so much?" And that's crazy because you must be rolling in money. And I'm like, you don't say that to anybody else. Why is it that it's a big deal? And and I still remember, we were doing a music session, and Anupama Ramaswamy, she was promoted something, and the first thing, a music director, and very, very casually and, meaning absolutely no harm, and said, "My God, that means you're going to earn a lot of money." Hell yeah. What the hell? You're earning a lot of money by just creating a 30-second track right now. Nobody's questioning that.
Right.
And maybe that's more than her entire month's salary, your one day's music direction fees, But how come that's not an issue? And then suddenly, and she's like, some partner, whatever, very, very long, illustrious position in the company. And why is that something that you're talking about? It's ridiculous. It's just that, it bothers people. And I find that amusing. It doesn't bother me because I don't have to live with them or care about them. But it's just amusing.
Right. I think to me, what bothers me is women not asking for it, just not asking for the raise that they deserve. I know, Shisha, you just said that you earn a lot, but you wouldn't want to earn a lot more. So why did you say that?
No,
as in...
I want to say that It's,
Right.
I think as women, subconsciously, somewhere we think, we have to justify much more than what we have been paid for. I don't know why it comes, and I see it. I see it in our, we thankfully have been hiring a lot of women crew also, and it doesn't happen with male counterparts because they think it's fine. But with us, we need to justify. We need to give much more than what we are. I don't know where it comes from. And also, what I wanted to add to what Shisha said is, I do the negotiation with a lot of cost controllers also. So when I put in director's fee, which is Shisha's fee, there's always a conversation. And I'm wondering, I've been producers to even a lot of male directors, but nobody questioned what fee a male director charges. Why is it that I have to justify or say, yes, she is worth this much money? Why should I say that?
Exactly. Yes.
And a lot of women negotiators also ask. So somewhere I feel it's not just only men who are asking us why we're being paid. I think somewhere we are also not,
Yes.
we have to justify somewhere, and we have to be okay. Like how Shisha said, I think we do much more than what we have committed to, and that comes from the fact that let's deliver more. It's not a bad thing, but it's somewhere a money thing in our heads.
No, damn right. I mean, the guilt that comes with just asking, I still remember the first time I asked for it, I was shivering because I was just so taken by it. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't deserve it. Why did I ask for it? Will this affect how people see me? Will this affect my growth path here? So there were all those questions that just came on me. And then until the day I realized that everyone else got paid way more than I did. And I did probably more work than the others. So it's definitely, guilt and not asking for it, feeling that you're not worth it, something that naturally comes to women. Akansha, what about you?
Yeah, exactly that. We've internalized that, haven't we, to a certain extent, that maybe I don't deserve it. But I've got the funniest reactions to a certain quote and to learning of the money conversation when it comes to men. So there are two sets of reactions. And you're right, someone said that women themselves sort of have internalized misogyny to a certain extent. But I've actually had someone ask me, "Tu itte paise ka karegi kya?" Because economics and women have never really, what is a woman going to do with so much money? What expenses does she have? I don't know. Same as you, man. I'm going to invest it. I'm going to blow it up. I'm going to buy a new house. I'm going to save it. Same shit as you. But it's like, it's unfathomable that, financial planning and prudence is or something that we like doing. And that's the first step of independence, isn't it? Financial freedom is the first sort of flag that you put down that represents independence and empowerment, and that's threatening to a certain extent. And that we may have internalized that threat. So we want to just sort of pussyfoot around it to ask for our due, because we don't want to be too threatening in that room. We don't want to appear as if, we're too aggressive. Let the men do the aggressive stuff. We're going to just sort of gently ask what we're worth for. Too expensive? Okay, so fine. I'll just bring it back a little bit so that I'm a little more acceptable to you. I want that. Enough with being acceptable. Enough with not asking for what we think we're worth.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen this. I've just seen this in the difference between I have a younger brother who's also in advertising, doing the same job as I am. And I've seen the way he looks at job interviews and approaches them, and the conversation about money versus mine. Mine is always tempered with, oh my God, will they pay me? Despite the fact that I've had an amazing career. And my brother's younger than me, of course, so he hasn't done as much as I have. But he's like, yeah, I'm not going there if they give me X, Y, if they don't give me X, Y, Z. And his approach to this is just like, he goes in expecting it and he gets it also. I'm like, what the fuck? How did you manage to get it? तुमने तो कुछ भी नहीं किया अपनी जिंदगी में.
Right. Lisa, have you noticed a difference in your team? So let's say a man versus a woman coming to you to ask for a raise. What's the pattern like?
there's some okay. The first thing I have to tell you that we did 50 voices on the collective, and Shisha's point about the money is the most liked and commented and shared video, which tells me of all the issues we have. And I actually texted her saying, oh my God, of all the issues women have, this asking for money is, or why do I have to justify how much I am worth to you, is so deeply, running through everything apart from the other 101 issues we have. Another interesting thing about negotiation, when I moved agencies, because I got a call from the creative director of this really hotshot agency, and I got this great offer immediately, blah. And I remember coming back home and telling my husband that this is it, and he said, so did you negotiate? And I was so in awe of being invited to the table that I'd completely forgotten that I was even meant to negotiate. It was almost like, oh, thank you so much, I'm so grateful you are paying me so much. And that the word negotiation was something we need to go through and learn had just escaped me. And it was such a solid kick in the wrong places to say it has to begin there, because you're so because you're not conditioned to again to do that money talk. It's like people have told me they cringe. Is there a difference? Somebody told me just 3 weeks ago in another conversation, which I absolutely loved, about how women can negotiate better. And I'm wondering, and I thought so much about it. She said, I just go in, and when I have to ask for money, and I look like I don't really need it, like I look rich, whatever that meant. So she said, and I thought it was fantastic, because the conversation is always about, I'm getting married, now I have a child, college, something, I need money. And she said, just walk in looking like you earn shitloads, and say, I want more money because this is what my work, brings to the table. And it really, and she said it works every time. Now, I don't know how often I'm going to have women coming in like looking rich, but I get the point. Don't digress and make it about everything else and everybody. Make it about you. Make it about your friggin' work. Make your talent. Make it about what all we women say we're bringing to the table, and let the negotiation start from there. Do not make it about the mind conversation, which is about the mouths to feed and the what I'm saying.
Right.
Now I'm getting married. Now I'm doing this. I would love it. Firstly, I hope I'm getting paid as much as the guys. I have no idea. Unlike you all, I suspect I'm not, but that's a different conversation. But I hope it's going to be, because I'm worth every bit of that. And not because, oh, I'm running a house and I have kids to feed. I mean, that's not the conversation I want to have. And I want to start, and I hope women can bring that, because that changes the dynamics completely. And then I want to hear you, because finally that's what I'm getting paid for. I'm paying other people for. So that's really what I feel about this whole negotiation conundrum.
So my two bits to this very quickly is that I think the larger challenge here is a lot of men are out there in the PR ecosystem, in a lot of conversations, in articles, and they do their own PR runs. There are companies who do their PR runs for themselves, that before they walk into a room, there's already someone who's already heard of them. So they already have an impression that is built of them, that this person's not going to come in easy. So they've already raised the bar. They are not talking about themselves, everyone else is. This, for us, in case of, and I face that myself, because talking about myself, I get a little embarrassed. Growing up, we've been asked to be humble. Growing up, we've been asked to be, let our work talk for ourselves and do not talk too much about yourself. I think we've imbibed that too much into our own world. So when we walk into the room, the first thing that we are doing is telling people what we've done in the past. So we are talking about ourselves, which is already disempowering in the first place.
Right.
And then you then sort of send your links and everything else around it. And then that's where the negotiation conversation starts. If we can collectively start talking, and Wench itself as a movement is a start to it, I guess, because it really does talk about us. It gives us an opportunity to let us talk about ourselves, our thoughts, our conversations. More conversations like this, more discussions like this, than just becoming like in the spot movement, they become a constant conversation. It'll really, really help, because and coming from a digital space, we don't always have to have an opinion based conversation. We can start conversations about ourselves, and we really need to start looking at ourselves as a brand in the first place. If we can do that, if we can look at ourselves as a brand, when we walk into that room, we already will have a negotiation power. Our age, I look like a baby face child. I've been in the industry for about a decade already, and when I walk in, they start off by looking at me as a child. They think she's a tiny thing, she's a baby of the group, and I do get a lot of that. But when they see me work, it changes entirely. But that, for me, the first step when I enter, the cuteness that I come with might not necessarily be the best time to negotiate. That might not be the best thing that I'd kind of work with. So I try and build on, I am working towards it. I am trying to get myself be known out there in the first place before I walk into the room. And maybe that might just change the scenario.
That's great advice. Thank you. And I think we're way over time. So my last question to you all, and if you could all answer it in one line, is what's your message for the industry? Starting with whoever wants to go first. Okay, I'm just going to follow the panel here. Shisha, why don't you go first?
Honestly, I've had... I've always had great friends in this industry, and they've always been very, very sensitive, to me. And clearly, there are certain kind of people, who we work with, who are clearly not sexist and who are not, a particular way. So I have no angst or but I do think giving just to hear out what we have to say is a good way to begin, just to hear you out. It's not like it's not like an advice or anything like that, but it's just that sometimes people just tend to kind of not listen to you because they feel you don't know and they know better. It's not like that. It's also a very male thing to feel like they know better, they want to daddy you and all of that. I just think that is so not true, and we can do without it.
Sonal, you're on mute now.
Yeah, stop mansplaining, I'm tired of being told how things work. I'm old enough to have figured that out on my own. Lived as a single woman across so many places, across so many countries, moved my whole household, my cats, etc. Don't tell me how taxes work. Don't tell me how finances work. Don't tell me how money works. Also, don't tell me how data works, because damn, I'm good at numbers. Don't think that just because I'm a woman, I'm not good at numbers.
Right. Teesta?
One sentence. Actually, we need men around the table as well. And we need men not for all the right reasons that, both of them just mentioned, but to be allies, and we speak a lot about it. And we're not some bunch of women doing a little panel and, venting and then going back to our day jobs. This is pretty much what we're living with 24/7. And if we can meet and, if they can hear us for the right reasons and work together with us, that would be super fantastic. We're not here to climb that mountain and do it alone and wave our whatever's in the air. We want to do it together because we want them to listen, and we believe we can be a much better industry for it. Finally, what are we talking about? We're creating good work. We're creating award-winning work at times, and we're creating work that supposedly, changes or ignites a conversation. And how better than to do it within ourselves. So yeah, that would be my thing.
Chanel?
I just think, stop asking me for an ROI for what I do. I think that's the only thought that I really have. It's a marketing activity. Love the stories, love the discussions, talk more, have more opinions, and I would love the banter. I love the banter I have with my colleagues, male or female. Let our ideas talk. Let it be a brainstorming rather than mansplaining. Let it be a conversation rather than trying to make me understand what I'm doing wrong and appreciate what I'm doing right, I guess. That's it.
Cool. Ramya?
I would also say let our work speak, and let's not be quick to judge another woman. That's all. Yeah.
Akansha?
I think in 3 quick parts, I think we first of all need to look inward as much as we can do these panels. Where all in our day do we partake in subtle gender biases? Is it in the crews that we are hiring? Is it in the people we are choosing to work with? Some of that is internalized. We need to just be a little more self-aware of we as creative women. How are we sort of shifting the needle on that? Secondly, what Ramya just said and what everyone has been saying, we at the end of the day are going to be each other's greatest support system. And stuff like this, more and more conversations like this, more events like this, I think that's the need of the hour. And of course, thirdly, very quickly, question what we are being asked to do. And this specifically for creators. I think Shisha's already doing that. I've seen her work. I disagree. Comedy and women is happening, and I'm very happy about that. I think we are casting differently. I think we're stopping and saying, hey, does she need to be a chubby woman? Are you sure you're not body shaming? Or just because she's a boss, does she need to have short hair and be a little cocky and bitchy? We're asking the right questions. It has started slowly. There's still a long, long way to go, but I think our jobs is to keep asking that question over and over and over again, gently, and bring about a larger change at the end of the day. And of course, fourthly, Sonal, I couldn't agree with you more. Don't save me. I don't need saving. I'm fine as I am. I may be a disaster, but I don't need you to save me. I'm good. Having said that, Sakshi, as founder of Indian Creative Women, we want to hear from you. What is your one-line solution to going forward, and how do you think? What do you think you're going to do differently after today's panel?
So, two things that two different that run in parallel. My message to the industry is hire more women, but not as tokens. We're here to give you good work. We're here to make you more profitable because you're talking to mass consumers and we understand those insights. The subtleties that we spoke of, I mean, can't stress enough about the importance of having a woman on the table when you have a conversation about selling it to a woman. So that's my message for the industry. My message to all of us women is, I know we often say, and I know Akansha, you touched upon it, about a woman creative director versus a creative director, or a woman filmmaker versus a filmmaker. For me, and I've been on a journey. I still remember I used to feel extremely offended if someone would call me a woman creative director because I felt it underplayed everything else that I brought to the table, like my talent, my worth, my experience. But in the last couple of years, I have started embracing woman creative director. And I love that. I'll tell you for 2 reasons. One, because it's a currency right now. All of us don't realize our worth. And for me, that helps me play that. But the second and most important thing is representation. I think till the time we talk about what women bring to the table, empathy, nuances, our leadership style, our femininity, if we don't talk about that enough, I don't think women who are entering the industry see themselves in us. So I wholeheartedly embrace myself as a woman creative director. And having said that, I hate tokenism. So don't hire me because I'm a woman creative director. I completely believe in that. But yes, call me a woman creative director because I know what I bring to the table and I'm extremely confident about that. So those would be my last bits.
Do shade to
that. No, and I think a huge, huge thank you to the Wench Film Festival for bringing all of us together. Sapna, thank you for doing this, not just for us, but for the world. A huge thank you to our partners and our biggest partner, Movie Saints, for making this happen. And a huge thank you to each of you. Thank you. This was great. I will send out emails to each of you and we will collaborate on Indian Creative Women. Indian Creative Women is on Instagram. There's a website. Now we're on Twitter too. So follow us and you'll see what's happening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye.